I'm Natasha Kirchek, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a top Hamas leader is arrested in the West Bank. The U.S. Secretary of State has the details on when the U.S. Embassy will be moved to Jerusalem. And the Maccabeats have just given music fans an amazing gift for the first night of Hanukkah. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Tensions are ramping up between Israel and Hamas on both fronts. In Gaza, the terror group has launched yet another rocket at Israeli territory. And meanwhile, in the West Bank, the army has just arrested one of Hamas's top leaders and founding members.
This is all in the wake of Palestinian rage that boiled over less than a week ago, when President Donald Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and pledged to move the U.S. Embassy accordingly. Hamas has been rallying for a third intifada wave of terror against Israel ever since, and terror attacks have spiked nearly every day as a result. To calm the violence, the army has just arrested one of Hamas's leading figures in the cry for terror, Sheikh Hassan Youssef, who is also one of Hamas's founding members. 31 other Palestinians have also been arrested for suspicion of inciting terror. These arrests come shortly after Hamas fired yet another rocket from the Gaza Strip at Israel. Rockets were fired earlier this week as well, one of which actually hit an empty Israeli kindergarten. But fortunately, this latest one fell short and exploded inside of Gaza. Israeli jets have retaliated as usual by bombing a Hamas outpost in the Strip. But clearly, this escalation is just getting started.
In light of President Trump's bombshell declaration on Jerusalem, both Iran and Hezbollah are realigning their focus and setting their crosshairs directly on Israel. The leader of Iran is promising to continue backing Hamas until the Jewish state is destroyed, and Hezbollah is rallying for a unified front to reclaim Jerusalem for the Palestinians.
اليوم محور المقاومة ودول محور المقاومة تخرج من محنة السنوات الماضية وبالرغم من الجراح والآلام التي أصابتها تخرج منتصرة قوية صلبة. هذا المحور يكاد أن ينهي معاركه في الإقليم ويلحق الهزيمة بكل الأدوات التكفيرية التي استخدمتها أمريكا وإسرائيل لإسقاطه وسحقه.
Hezbollah's resources have been divided recently in the fight against ISIS, but Trump's now infamous recognition of Jerusalem has shot the Palestinian cause back to the top of the terror group's to-do list. We're seeing a similar refocusing in Iran, where the Iranian president has just called the leader of Hamas, promising to commit resources towards terror against Israel. Rocket attacks from Gaza have ramped up since Trump's promise to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, with fresh Iranian dollars behind them. Hamas could launch even more rockets very shortly. Meanwhile, Palestinian reconciliation efforts have staggered to a near standstill. Though Fatah and Hamas each blame one another for failing to meet the latest deadline, many believe unrest and frustration over Trump's speech has played a key role in the slowdown. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas isn't even in the West Bank at the moment. Right now, he's in Istanbul for an emergency meeting on Trump's Jerusalem statement. Abbas has just declared that all past agreements with Israel since Oslo are now void, and that the United States will no longer be accepted as any kind of player in the peace process. Well, the world remains fiercely divided over President Trump's now infamous announcement to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. But for those predicting an immediate overnight change, the Secretary of State has just tempered those expectations. ILTV's Aaron Porras has the scoop on this story. So, Aaron, how long will the move take?
At least a few years' time, according to the Secretary of State Tillerson. There are a lot of things that need to be considered logistically and worked out before anything is actually moved anyway.
Now, I'm assuming that security is one of those considerations, obviously, but what are the others?
Yeah, I mean, aside from security considerations, there are many things to consider. First, it obviously takes time to find and or physically build an embassy, and right. Even if we found an existing structure, it would have to be massively renovated before any personnel and any activities were moved there officially. Second, if you're talking about all the personnel who work there and their families, are they going to have to move to Jerusalem? Is the government going to cover that or subsidize it at all? How will it affect their families and the schooling that maybe their kids go to and things like that? So all of that really needs to be considered. There are a lot of things that are going through the government's mind. And again, so it'll take several years to work that out, unfortunately, for all the people who are waiting for that embassy move. So it won't be tomorrow. And then there are other things to consider as well, but I'll tell you about them right now in my report.
According to Rex Tillerson, the embassy move will take at least another 3 years, meaning it's unlikely to happen until after 2020. That's why President Trump, despite his decision, has gone ahead and signed the waiver that officially delays the physical move for another 6 months. Tillerson says the United States will need the next several years, if not longer, to develop plans for the new embassy, get congressional approval for money, and then actually build the new embassy in Jerusalem. Quote, "It's not going to be anything that happens right away," Tillerson's confirmed, adding that the move is, quote, "probably no earlier than 3 years out, and that's pretty ambitious," end quote. For the time being, United States documents and passports will also not be changed to reflect the shift in Jerusalem policy.
Intense anti-Semitic rallies and symbols have surfaced in Germany, of all places, in an apparent response to President Trump's controversial decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. This is the backdrop of an otherwise joyous ceremony where Israel's ambassador helped light Berlin's massive menorah, kicking off the first night of Hanukkah in Germany.
This is a city that has overcome many challenges and thrived through tolerance, coexistence, and freedom of worship, and it will continue to do so. I, of course, refer to my home city of Jerusalem, a city of great spirituality, serenity, and inspiration, which all make me proud to say and declare in this place, at this time, in these days, Ich bin ein Jerusalemer. Chag Sameach.
Israel's ambassador to Germany, Jeremy Issacharoff, is in Berlin for the first night of this year's Festival of Lights, celebrating decades of German-Israeli friendship. But 70 years after the horrors of the Holocaust, fresh anti-Semitic slogans have just ignited at German rallies. Though Germany, like most of the world, has condemned Trump's decision to declare Jerusalem as Israel's capital, German leaders are appalled to see political protests taking a dark anti-Semitic turn.
So wie Hanukkah für die Kraft und das spirituelle Überleben des Judentums steht, so ist das Hanukkah-Kerzenzünden hier im Herzen unserer Stadt auch ein Symbol für das starke und eben selbstbewusste Judentum im heutigen Berlin. Das sage ich auch ganz deutlich an die Adresse derjenigen, die neuerdings wieder öffentlich für völkische Ideen schwärmen und gegen unsere Gedenkkultur hetzen. Oder die gegen die Politik Israels hetzen und ausgerechnet am 9. November, dem Gedenktag der Novemberpogrome, hier vor dem Brandenburger Tor zum Boykott israelischer Waren aufrufen. Ich sage deutlich, wir werden diesem schändlichen Tun nicht tatenlos zusehen, sondern jeder Form von Antisemitismus entschieden gemeinsam entgegentreten.
Protests against Trump's decision continue to surge throughout the world, but to see Israeli flags and Jewish symbols being burned in Germany, of all places, is a truly disturbing sight.
Well, Israeli investors may want to start turning their focus to Armenia. And joining us now to tell us why is attorney Tzvi Kantor, the chairman of the Israel-Armenia Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
I understand that Armenia is a member of the Eurasian Economic Union, which has many benefits for Israeli companies that choose to work there. Can you tell us what those benefits are?
Yes, this is the best possible access to a market of about 180 million people that composed out of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia. And Armenia is the most stable country in this region, both financially and politically.
Very interesting. So you know, you're saying that investors should now start focusing on this country. Why now rather than in the past?
Because in the past, there are basically two reasons. One is the fact that the EU-Asia market exists only for 2-3 years. It wasn't there before. On top of that, Armenia introduced free trade zone, in which each country that operates benefit from no VAT, no property tax, and other concession. and provide full industrial park services. So the combination of those three things, full services on the ground, tax-free zone, and custom, easy access to the custom unity, create the reason.
Beautiful. So, you know, what kind of value could Israeli investors see in the future coming from Armenia?
Armenia is a small country with 3 million people, so I don't think that the main reason to operate in Armenia would be business selling to the Armenian market, although it's a market.
It's more of just basing companies within Armenia
exactly,
to export. Okay.
And the industrial park that are being built next to airport make it very easy for Israeli company to export the goods or services through Armenia to the Union, while in Armenia there is a very high percentage of young people who speak English and Russian. So it's a very good jump point.
Right, well, it's the future of perhaps Israeli business. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll have to wait and see what happens, right?
Correct. Thank you very much.
All right. A controversial bill which would force nearly all Israeli stores to close on Shabbat has just passed a first vote, but that's because an ultra-Orthodox minister actually threatened to quit the government unless the bill passed, a move that forced the Knesset to pull a late-night vote at 4:30 in the morning.
Though Tel Aviv is exempt, the proposed law would require most Israeli businesses to get special permission from the Interior Ministry in order to stay open during the hours of Shabbat on weekends. That permission would almost certainly be denied because Aryeh Deri, the Interior Minister, is head of the ultra-Orthodox party that demanded the law in the first place. That's why when support for the bill started to drop, Deri said he would resign from office unless the bill passed in its first reading. Critics say the law assaults religious freedom for citizens all over the country, even a huge percentage of Jews who identify as secular, and it could also destroy local businesses. But ultra-Orthodox parties argue it enforces Jewish values through the law, which is clearly why they're so committed to passing it.
Here in the Holy Land, it's mandatory for both men and women to enlist into the army and to learn how to defend their country. Men enlist for 3 years, women for 2, and now a new IDF program is about to train recruits who place on the autism spectrum. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here to tell us more.
Okay, hi Natasha. Yes, well, like you said, Army service is mandatory here in Israel for both men and women, and it's a critical aspect in Israeli culture that strengthens the citizens of this country. Now, this innovative IDF program called Roim Rachok, which means looking ahead in Hebrew, is designed to train adults on the autism spectrum for specific Army professions. But the program is completely voluntary, of course. The first course was actually back in 2013 and offered training for deciphering aerial and satellite photography. The training was based on the idea that people on the autistic spectrum are visually oriented, patient, and can focus incredibly well on detail, skills that the Army can certainly put into good use.
Wow, this program is groundbreaking. I mean, the skills that people on the autism spectrum could learn in the Army could definitely help them long-term as well, especially when it comes to finding jobs after the military. So has the program developed since that first course?
Well, it's actually expanded quite a bit into all different kinds of professions that the IDF needs, or even civilian jobs in the market. For example, software quality assurance, information sorting, and electronics tech work. I actually heard about this program through an extremely touching video I came across on Facebook, but let's check out a short clip.
אתה באמת חייל מיוחד, לא רואים חיילים כאלה כל יום.
שלום, גיל זיו, אני בן 21, אני מתקן את המכשירים של הלוחמים.
שאלו אותי אם אני רוצה לפקד על חיילים שהם על הרצף האוטיסטי. אמרתי שזה נשמע מעניין, ואז ממש התחלנו להריץ את הדברים.
לפני הצבא לא כל כך מצאתי את הכיוון שלי, ובזכות הצבא מצאתי כיוון. רציתי לתרום למדינה, ורציתי לדעת את המשמעות של להיות המדהים.
אני רואה שיפור מאוד משמעותי וגדול בכל החיילים. זיו לדוגמה באמת יוצא עם כולם, הולך להפסקות, אפילו נפגש איתם אחרי הבסיס. לא רואים חיילים כאלה כל יום, ואני שמחה שאני מפקדת עליהם.
אם קם בבוקר אומר, יהיה לי טוב. אז אני יודע שיהיה לי טוב.
In the United States alone, about 10 to 15 million people suffer from bunions, a bony bump that forms on the joint at the base of your big toe. Now, this may not sound like a big deal, but it can cause chronic pain that just gets worse as time goes on. And joining us now is Rafi Herzog, the owner and CEO of Cglue Orthopedics, which has a new treatment for this condition. Thanks so much for joining us. So let's talk a little bit about how bunions have been treated in the past.
Okay, traditional surgery, which takes place for more than 200 years, is very basic. And what doctors, the common practice is, in order to put back the original bone, actually the deformed bone, simply cut the bone very aggressively, move it backward. So it's okay, but not so okay, because patients following the surgery, they suffer from pain, a lot of disability over time, and it takes weeks till they recover.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a problem.
So what is the treatment that you guys have created?
Okay. The point is that the basic is that the bone was deformed outward.
Right.
So we just using an implant, a very small implant, and special surgery procedures and tools, we move the bone backward to the original position. So this is a minimal invasive surgery, very small pain following the surgery, and recovery is within days.
That's unbelievable that you found this treatment. So is it available now, or is it going to be available soon? What's the status?
Yes, we are currently raising money using PeopleBiz here. It's a crowdfunding in Israel. And hopefully, a year from now, it will be available in the United States and then in Israel following FDA approval.
Beautiful. Well, I really wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you guys are able to succeed in getting the money that you need and the funding that you need, because I know this is something that a lot of people face, like we said. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, we all knew the Mediterranean diet was crazy delicious, but it turns out it's actually one of the healthiest diets out there too. A new study has just shown that eating like an Israeli for 18 months might actually be one of the most effective ways to cut body fat, even if you don't exercise regularly. This is incredible news, but don't go reaching for that extra falafel just yet. The study cites the low-carb version of the Mediterranean diet as the best way to actually cut down on the body's fat storage centers. So if you want to melt away those love handles, you'll have to stick with fish, fruit, nuts, and vegetables, but cut back on red meat and carbohydrates in general. And don't forget the olive oil. Now, if you're saying, hey, that sounds like a lot of fat in my food, well, you're right. The Mediterranean diet is high in fat, which is why nutritionists haven't been big fans of it. But a breakthrough new study by the American Heart Association says that polyunsaturated fats, like the ones found in Israeli restaurants, are actually far superior in helping the body naturally break down fat. So yes, dip your bread in that olive oil, heck, even double dip. Scientists say it might just help shave off an extra pound or two. All right, if you're looking for the place to learn how to become the next leader of the digital revolution, then look no further. Israel's Technion Institute of Technology has just ranked in as the #1 university in the world for digital studies.
This #1 slot as the top academic institution in the world for digital education is a huge win for Israeli educators. The Technion beat out amazing universities like the College of London and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to grab the winning honor in the Times Higher Education Survey. Not too long ago, the Technion, which is based in Haifa, was actually listed among the top 100 innovative universities in the world as well. Advanced learning techniques like the Technion's flipped classroom, which pushes students to self-study using augmented reality, have been cited as reasons for its massive success. The institute also hosts massive online open courses for its students in all kinds of languages, and its graduates historically find excellent placement in the workforce. So step aside, Zuckerberg. The next digital revolutionary might very well be sitting in an Israeli university as we speak.
Wouldn't it be nice to be able to stream your Netflix series without any interruptions because of faulty internet? We all know what it feels like to want to destroy our wireless router when it misbehaves. And joining us now is Itzik Kirschenbaum, whose company Cglue is promising us a future of faster internet. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
So what does your company do? Break it down in a very basic and simple way for us.
In a simple way, we enable to bring 4K, 8K, any number of televisions to your home through your broadband connectivity.
Wow, okay. And so, yeah, go ahead.
The only way to do it so far was to bring fiber to every house. Now we have a radio, small radio size of an iPhone that you can put out of your window, and then you can actually stream everything that you want into your house.
Now, this is extremely important because nowadays people have kind of transitioned from watching TV to streaming all their videos online. So, you know, you want fast internet ultimately.
Yes. Actually, what we have done, we've managed to penetrate in the US major customers. So Google Fiber tried for a few years to dig fiber to get to your house. And at some point they realized they need to have wireless. And they acquired a wireless company that was actually our customer. So now Google is our biggest customer in the US.
Congratulations, that's a big deal.
It's called WebPass that you see it here on the screen.
Yeah.
And now...
And I understand that your product also addresses another important issue, right? Smart cities.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when we talk about smart cities, we talk about many applications. I think that the most visible application now is security and surveillance. You put surveillance cameras everywhere, and you want to stream the real picture to every place. And today, since you cannot bring actually fiber to every street pole, to every lamppost, where you put your cameras, you need to do it wirelessly. The existing technology of Wi-Fi has interference. So actually, in order to get that information in high density, in high capacity, this is where we serve with the same equipment. We serve also that market. And actually, I'm happy to say that here in Israel, we have now about 10 cities who have actually started to deploy smart city based on that technology.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about this. I think that you are probably the guy that everybody wants to get to know, especially when it comes to watching something like Netflix, right? But thank you for coming in. All right. Well, in the 90s, we had Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song. But in 2007, a group of Jewish a cappella singers called the Maccabeats became the new kings of Hanukkah, releasing a string of awesome and catchy a cappella holiday music. 10 years later, the Maccabeats are celebrating this Hanukkah by looking back at a decade of Jewish harmonies and hits. Check out their new video, which is already a viral hit.
The Maccabeats' personal Hanukkah song for 2017 is called Candle on the Sill, a catchy, intimate spin on Ed Sheeran's Castle on the Hill. The internet with their Hanukkah-themed rendition of Tayo Cruz's Dynamite, which they called Candlelight, and has over 13 million views on YouTube. Every year, the Maccabeats release a new hit a cappella mashup for the holiday, and from the look of this year's video, 2017 doesn't disappoint.
Take us back to when.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say miracles happen when you believe. And since the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah has just started, today's word is nes, which means miracle in Hebrew. On Hanukkah, Jews celebrate the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem by remembering the nes of the temple menorah. They needed oil to light the menorah, but could only find enough to keep the flames burning for one night. But the nes is that the oil lasted for 8 days, giving them enough time to make more oil and keep the eternal flame lit. Let's put that in perspective. Imagine your cell phone only had 10% battery, but it lasted for 8 whole days. Knowing my iPhone, that's a true nes. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a drop in temperatures and a low of roughly 57 or 14 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect an additional drop in temperatures and a chance of rain in the morning. The high for the day should be about 70 or 12 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.55 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.